just talking about the decision made to give one of the police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, a 33-month prison sentence, despite the fact that the Trump Department of Justice had suggested just 1 day. And we were walking through the Breonna Taylor information and giving people more about that because it's been several years, and some of you may well have forgotten about what took place there. Well, listening in Louisville, Kentucky, was one of the officers involved in that raid. His name is John Mattingly, and he is with us now. And so I want to bring him in. And I'll just say, first of all, thanks for listening. And broadly, just tell us what happened on that day and what you think about the 33-month sentence that your former police officer colleague got in that case. And obviously, thanks for listening. What can you tell us about that day?
Yeah, Clay and Travis, I appreciate you guys having me on and being willing to get it from, a firsthand source, somebody who's kind of been through the fire and all this thing. First off, let me start with the decision. I think the judge, when it was the Biden DOJ, did everything they asked for. In the case, in the trial, there were so many things that were unprofessional by that DOJ. I've never sat on a side and felt like it was a defense attorney over there with underhand tactics, lying. She did not allow cell phones to get entered into evidence, or the ones that were in evidence. She refused to let them at trial. At the end, when the jurors kept coming back going, man, we got a hung jury, and then they asked the question, should we assume Breonna is dead or alive? She said, assume she was dead or alive, which totally negates the legal process and the judge's influence on the jury, because in order for a statute such as a civil rights violation, the person has to be alive. And there were just so many things, man. And I think the appeal is so strong and going to go very quickly once the process starts, if this DOJ even allows it, because I was sitting in the courtroom and I saw two faces to the DOJ, the one under Biden and the one under Trump. And the one under Trump was so rational and logical, like any human being would look at a process and go, this is the way it should be. This makes sense when you look at the facts of the case, and anything outside of this scope is unreasonable. And so I'm so happy that Trump's back in. I think if once this word gets out on how this DOJ is actually treating police officers now, not as some kind of wicked, racist, hateful people, as opposed to people who are risking their lives simply trying to get fentanyl off the street, trying to get murderers off the street. Because every time an action was taken, I've talked to thousands of cops across the country when I speak, and over, the sentiment I get from them is simply, we're scared to do our job. Anything we do, you've got to worry about the bad guy in front of you shooting you or hurting you, but more importantly, you got to worry about the government behind you stabbing you in the back. So
you sir, you were in handcuffs. You were at that raid. You were shot in the leg, correct?
Yes, it ripped through my femoral artery. Thank God for a tourniquet, or I wouldn't even be talking to you. So I had a 5.5-hour surgery, replaced 4 inches of the artery with the vein. And and that's the part that gets missed over. You talk about the active aggressor in this case was Kenneth Walker, her boyfriend.
Right. Well, see, the storyline.
Can you just take us through that day? Yes. Just tell us what happened.
Well, through the raid. What happened at the raid?
A lot of people don't know that story, so just take us there. Tell us.
Yeah. Let me tell about a couple of the falsehoods that the Ben Crumps of the world put out, and that was simply him and Kamala Harris and LeBron James and all these fools in Hollywood and the sports world were like, he said we had the wrong house, which is a lie. He said she was asleep in bed, which is a lie. They said it was a no-knock warrant, which was a lie, and that the boyfriend that we were, quote, looking for had been in custody for 10 hours, which was a lie. So when we get up to the door, our first knock, a normal knock, nobody came to the door, so we started banging. I mean, the loud, everybody knows the police knock, especially in that world. Banging, 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 screaming, police search warrant, police search warrant. And this went on for a minute, which when you're at a door, that feels like an eternity. I mean, we're just banging. A neighbor came out. We got into an interaction with them. They went back inside. And after a minute of them not coming to the door and us knocking and announcing, we breached the door. And as soon as that door was breached and I stepped into the door frame, I was met with a shot from Kenneth Walker that ripped through my leg. I was able to return a few shots before I got out of the line of fire, and that's when the guy behind me stepped up and began shooting as I went out. Well, Brett was the third one in the stack, and this is the whole premise of this case that gets misunderstood. And I had questions at first, too, because we're not trained to shoot through windows. That's not how we're trained. However, there's always exigent circumstances to things. And when Brett was at the door with me, he was the third one in the stack. He saw the shot, heard it, saw me go down and say I was shot. He circled around the front of the building as these shots were ringing out repeatedly by the other officer at the door. He could see the flashes through the window, and in his mind, he thought we were still getting fired upon by the individual inside. We were told when we went to this warrant by the investigators that did the case that it was just going to be Breonna at home. She's alone, no dogs, no kids, no boyfriends, no weapons. So in our mind, that's what we were expecting because we thought they did a thorough investigation, which comes to find out they didn't. So once we're met with fire and all this gunfire is getting exchanged, Brett circles around to the front and sees these flashes of the flame in the dark of the night in this house. And he's like, man, my guys are getting executed at the doorway because he knew I'd already been shot and was down. So he started firing through the windows in an attempt only to stop the threat, only to get that guy to quit shooting. Because in his mind, what he perceived in that moment, in those few seconds, and this thing was quick. I mean, it was started and over within 12 seconds. It was completely silent after 12 seconds. And so that's the premise of the case. That's where they're saying, "Oh, he did this."
Well, this is important. I'm glad you shared all that with us because I think a lot of people out there listening right now are probably reacting as many other jurors have, which is you got shot by someone inside of this apartment. How in the world is a police officer returning fire at what he thinks is someone trying to kill his fellow officers, guilty of a crime that would necessitate him being in prison for 3 years? That seems crazy.
Yeah, deprivation of civil rights specifically. Which, let's try to square that circle.
Insane. Yeah, it doesn't even meet the standards of that, number one. But secondly, Brett is the only officer ever charged for returning fire after being fired upon that hit no one. He's the only officer in American history who's been charged with that. And not only charged, but convicted and now sentenced.
Well, look,
so,
I mean, I think the good news is that, we can share our opinions here freely. We don't have to pretend to be sitting on the fence on these kinds of things. I think President Trump should commute or pardon Brett Hankinson immediately. And I know that there are people who listen to this show who are close to the president, who are right now in the White House. So I think President Trump, and I'll share this publicly, should at least step in with a commutation of this clay. I mean, I would say an outright pardon. The notion that this officer might serve, or that could even theoretically serve before appeal, almost 3 years in prison for shooting a gun when someone's been shooting at officers and he didn't even hit anybody. It's a case that is, but it's so instructive about how vile the Biden administration was when it came to throwing law enforcement under the bus.
Let me ask you this, Sergeant Mattingly. I don't even remember, who hit Breonna Taylor?
One of my bullets hit, I believe, her left leg, because as soon as Kenneth shot, he dove into a bedroom because he was right on a wall and she was on the outside of him. Number one, why do you bring your girlfriend out in the hall if you really think you're getting broken into to stand with you? So as soon as he shot, he dove out of the way like a coward. She attempted to follow him. One of my bullets struck her arm or leg. I can't remember which one. And then the other officer who was firing over top of me once I went down actually struck her, and tragically, nobody wanted her to die, but tragically one of the bullets struck her aorta, and the medical examiner said had she been shot at the door of the emergency room, she would not have lived. She died that quickly because it ripped through her aorta and she bled out. So the premise that we did not render aid, which is what the judge said, blew my mind. And I'm like, number one, Kenneth Walker didn't even call 911 for 6.5 minutes after this incident happened. He refused to come out until almost 17 minutes after this incident happened. He had no blood on him. And when he came out, he actually told the police on scene, on body cam, that Breonna's the one that shot because she was scared. So this dude's a liar.
And I forget, did he have a criminal record?
So he lied. He lied about who fired the shot on body camera?
Yes, I've got that video, yes.
Wait, but did he have a previous criminal record? I'm trying to remember all the facts of the case.
He had been arrested one time with a gun and marijuana, and originally he lost his rights to a weapon. They amended it down to a misdemeanor, like all these courts do for the thugs, and then he got his rights back for the gun. However, in his text thread on the phone they did download from him, He's on there dealing drugs to people. He's talking about home invasions. So this guy was not this saint that they put out.
How many
He's a
people do you
total.
think know? I appreciate you calling in. I mean, obviously, we didn't schedule this. You heard us talking about it. You're on. I'm assuming in Louisville, listening to us there. We have a big audience. How many people do you think know the full story here? Because I think Buck's right. President Trump should commute your fellow officer. This 33-month sentence is crazy for what he was charged with. The initial, by the way, warrant. For people out there who don't know, you were told that she was there by herself. Well, what was the intent of the warrant? What were you going to try to do?
Well, this was going to be a RICO case on this Jamarcus Glover, who had just been a menace. He had 6 or 7 pending felony cases in circuit court for guns and drugs, fentanyl, all this stuff. This is what tied him to her apartment that everybody asked about. His ID had her address. His vehicles were registered to her address. His phone came back to her address. His bank account had her address. In January, 2 months prior to this incident, he was arrested on a warrant for drugs and guns, on a search warrant where they got 7 guns and a bunch of dope. And she's the one that bailed him out. And when she was there to bail him out, she gave her address as his and gave her phone number as his. So everything tied back to her. On jail records, it's got him talking about Breonna held all of our money because his baby mama was ticked off that 14,000 of his was at her house. And he said, well, baby, she holds all of our money. And so she was tied into this. In 2017, she rented a car that a person was murdered in, and they found the vehicle with this dude shot in the head. And when they asked her about it, she was like, I don't know what happened to the car. I gave it to Jamarcus Glover. And nothing was ever done with that. She was not an EMT, and I'm not bashing her, but all the media lied about all this stuff. She was not an EMT. She got fired in 2017 after only 5 months of being on the job, and wasn't even off probation. And the city did a no rehire clause, which is rare in most instances. So there was some pretty serious stuff tied to that. And so this whole case of y'all shouldn't have been there in the first place. Well, she was part of this organization. She may not have been the one physically slinging the drugs, but she was out there. She was deeply involved.
Well, this is we appreciate you calling us and filling in our audience, because this is great.
And you're doing a service by telling the people the truth about this. And also, like I said, we've got senators, we got people in and around Trump at the White House who are going to be hearing this. And there's absolutely no way that officer should be serving a day in prison for this. It's a total outrage of the justice system.
Well, one of the travesties in this case, guys, is that from the beginning, our department refused to combat any of the lies. They've never told the truth about it. Our mayor at the time, super liberal.
Did they fire you?
No, they couldn't. I
okay.
wasn't violating law or violating policy.
Right.
They wanted to. They demoted me down into the property room from my narcotics post. And when that happened, and the only reason they did it is because I wrote a book and started talking about it to tell the truth. And they were trying to do anything they could to fire me. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I wanted my pension because that was the only way I was going to be able to feed my family. So I retired on my own accord because they were trying to push me out. And I wrote a book, 12 Seconds in the Dark, and you can get it on my website. And the only reason I wrote that wasn't for fame or notoriety, but because no one was telling the truth. Everybody had all these misconceptions of the case, and I was frustrated. And so we put that out there, and word has spread some. But when you're let's just face it, I'm a nobody. You guys didn't even know who I was except for what you saw in the media. So a nobody like me, it's hard to get the word out. It's hard to push this agenda when all the factors are against you.
JohnMattingly.com is his site. Officer Mattingly, thank you so much for shedding some very important light on this case, and we're going to stay on it, and a lot more people know about it now than did just a couple hours ago. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you guys for being the arbiter of truth.
Thank you so much.